Captain Lee Minho gripped the metal railing of his ship's bridge as he watched the alien vessel drift closer to Earth's space station. The ship looked nothing like the rough, battle-scarred human vessels that surrounded it, or human ships. Were built like weapons with sharp angles and thick armor. This alien craft flowed like water frozen in space. Its surface caught the light from Earth's sun and threw it back in colors that had no names. "Captain, they want to dock with us," said Lieutenant Park Gina from her seat at the communications panel. Her voice was steady, but Minho could hear the excitement underneath. After all these years of wondering if humans were alone in the galaxy, the answer had finally come to them. The Galactic Confederation. That's what they called themselves. A group of hundreds of alien species that had been traveling between the stars for thousands of years. They had finally noticed little Earth, tucked away in a quiet corner of the galaxy like a forgotten village. A shimmering blue light appeared on the bridge and slowly formed into the shape of Ambassador Kong Siwan. He was standing on the space station, but his image was clear enough that Minho could see the worry lines around his eyes. "Captain Lee," the ambassador said, "we have a problem. The aliens are not impressed with us. They say humans are too violent, too selfish. They've never met a species like us before." Minho looked back at the alien ship. Through his telescopes, he could see the creatures inside. They were tall and thin with skin so clear he could almost see through it. But they moved together like dancers who had practiced the same routine for years. When one turned its head, the others did the same. When one raised its hand, they all copied the movement. "What exactly are they saying about us?" Minho asked. The ambassador's image flickered as the signal wavered. "They're calling us aggressively individualistic. That's apparently the worst thing they can think of. Every other species they know thinks as one mind or follows strict rules that keep them peaceful. We're the first ones who fight with each other and still manage to work together." Lieutenant Gina leaned forward in her chair. "Sir, I'm reading their classification system. They've put us at Tier 9. What does that mean? It means we're at the bottom. We get almost no access to their advanced technology. We can't vote on important decisions. We're basically children at the adult table." Minho felt his jaw clench. Humans had fought their way off their home planet through wars, disasters, and countless failures. They had learned to build spaceships by crashing them first. They had figured out how to survive in the emptiness between stars by watching their friends die in the attempt. Every human ship carried the scars of hard-won lessons, but to these aliens all of that struggle meant nothing. Humans were just another primitive species that hadn't learned to behave properly. The ambassador continued his report. "They're debating whether to even let us join their confederation. Some of them think we're too dangerous. Others think we might learn to be more civilized if they give us time." Through the view screen, Minho watched the alien delegates in their perfect formation. They never interrupted each other. They never disagreed. They moved like a single organism with many bodies. It was beautiful in a way, but it also made his skin crawl. Captain Gina said quietly, "They're sending over their membership contract. The terms are pretty harsh. We have to promise not to expand our military. We can't explore certain regions of space. And if we break any of their rules, they can cut us off completely." Minho read through the contract on his personal screen. Every line was designed to keep humanity small and contained. The aliens were offering them membership in their great galactic community, but only if humans agreed to give up everything that made them human. The smart move would be to negotiate, to ask for better terms, to prove that humans deserved respect. But as Minho looked at those perfect, synchronized aliens, he realized something. They didn't understand humans at all. They saw the fighting, the competition, the messy individualism, and they thought it was a weakness. They had no idea that those same qualities had driven humans to survive ice ages, build civilizations, and reach for the stars. Ambassador Minho said, "Tell them we accept their terms." The hologram of Kong Siwan looked shocked. "Captain, are you sure? These restrictions will cripple our development." "No," Minho replied with a slow smile. "They'll just hide it. The aliens think they have us figured out. Let them believe their classifications and their rules matter. Humans have been underestimated before." He turned back to the view screen where the alien ship waited. "They think being Tier 9 means we're harmless. They think their restrictions will keep us in line. But they've never dealt with a species that sees every limitation as a challenge to overcome. Lieutenant Gina was grinning now. Sir, should I send the signed contract? Send it, Minho ordered. Oh. And make sure to thank them for their generous offer. Be very polite, very grateful. As the message went out, Minho watched the alien ship begin to turn away from Earth. Soon they would be gone, satisfied that they had properly managed another primitive species. They would file their reports and forget about the humans for a few decades. That would be their first mistake. Admiral Kim Do-ha was studying star charts in her command center when the emergency signal came through. The holographic projector buzzed to life, showing the face of Confederation, Admiral Velterra. Do-ha had met the alien commander before at diplomatic meetings. Velterra was always calm, always speaking in the soft musical tones that her species was known for. Now her translucent features were tight with fear. Admiral Kim, Velterra said, her voice shaking in a way that made Do-ha sit up straight. We need your help. The outer colonies are under attack. We have to evacuate everyone immediately. Do-ha pulled up her tactical screens with quick hand movements. What kind of attack? Pirates. Rebel forces. The hologram flickered and changed to show footage from a scout ship's cameras. At first, Do-ha couldn't make sense of what she was seeing. The image was grainy and kept jumping around, but slowly she began to understand. Black shapes were moving across the surface of a planet, like a dark ocean. Where the blackness touched, green forests and blue rivers disappeared. The world was being stripped bare. We call them the Devourers, Velterra explained. They eat everything, living, and turn it into more of their kind. Our scientists think there are trillions of them now. Lieutenant Commander Hans Sora, who was Do-ha's best tactical officer, leaned closer to the display. What kind of ships do they use? What weapons? That's the problem, Velterra replied. They don't build ships the way we do. They grow them. Ships are alive, and they can heal themselves when we damage them. They also learn from our attacks and adapt. The footage switched to show a space battle. Do-ha watched as the neat, orderly formations of Confederation ships fired their weapons at a massive swarm of organic vessels. The alien ships moved in perfect lines, just like they had been taught in their military academies. Their shots were precise and well-aimed, but the enemy didn't fight back the same way. The Devourers moved like a flock of birds or a school of fish. They flowed around the Confederation attacks, surrounding individual ships and tearing them apart with claws and teeth. When the organized alien fleet tried to retreat in formation, the swarm followed them and picked them off one by one. How many planets have they taken? Do-ha asked, though she was afraid to hear the answer. 17 core worlds in just 1 month, Velterra said. Billions of people. The High Council is meeting now to decide what to do next. When the transmission ended, Sora turned to her admiral. Ma'am, I hope you don't mind me saying this, but their battle tactics are terrible. They fight like it's still a practice exercise. Do-ha nodded grimly. She had seen this problem before in the Confederation military. For thousands of years, these alien species had lived in peace. They had bred the violence out of themselves, made themselves gentle and cooperative. Their wars were more like elaborate dances, with rules and honor codes that everyone followed. But the Devourers didn't follow any rules. They just killed and consumed and grew stronger. The problem is, Do-ha said, they've forgotten how to really fight. They know the theory, but they've never had to fight for their lives. Sora pulled up tactical data on her screen. Look at this footage again. See how the Confederation ships stay in formation, even when they're being slaughtered? They're more worried about following procedure than surviving. Do-ha watched the battle footage. Again, the alien commanders were giving orders that made perfect sense in a military textbook, but were completely wrong for this kind of enemy. They were trying to fight an organized war against creatures that only understood hunger and multiplication. Ma'am? Sora continued, humans have been fighting wars for thousands of years. Real wars where the losing side dies. We know things they've forgotten. Do-ha stood up from her command chair and walked to the large window that looked out into space. In the distance, she could see the lights of human ships patrolling their section of the galaxy. Those ships carried crews who understood that sometimes you had to break the rules to win. Sometimes you had to sacrifice one ship to save 10 others. Sometimes you had to fight dirty to survive. The Confederation had given humans the lowest rank in their society. They thought humans were too violent, too chaotic, too unpredictable. But now that same violence might be the only thing that could save them all. Send a message to Earth Command, Doha ordered. Tell them we're moving our fleet to the contested zone. Full battle readiness. Are we going to help them? Sora asked. Doha turned back to her tactical officer with a hard smile. We're going to show them what real war looks like. Confederation thinks they know everything about military strategy, but they've never faced an enemy that wanted to wipe them out completely. She looked at the star charts showing the advancing Devourer swarm. Prep the fleet for combat operations. Sora, make sure our people understand that this isn't going to be like the polite little conflicts the Confederation is used to. This is going to be ugly. Yes, ma'am? What's our primary objective? Simple, Doha replied. We're going to teach the galaxy how to win. Admiral Kim Doha stared at the tactical display showing the massive swarm of Devourer ships heading straight for the Centauri colonies. Behind those ships were millions of families who had never seen real war, who trusted the Confederation to protect them. The main alien fleet had already pulled back to regroup, leaving only 17 human vessels to face the enemy. Admiral, Captain Cho Minja's voice crackled over the communications system from his destroyer. My sensors show we're facing about 850 enemy ships. That's 50-1 odds. Doha smiled grimly from the bridge of her battleship Soul's Pride. Perfect. That means we have plenty of targets to choose from. She could hear nervous laughter from some of her bridge crew. They knew the odds were terrible, but they also knew something the Confederation had forgotten. Sometimes being outnumbered was an advantage if you were smart about it. Through her view screen, Doha watched the last Confederation ships jumping away to safety. They moved in beautiful formation, their retreat as organized and precise as everything else they did. It was exactly what their military manuals told them to do when facing overwhelming odds. Preserve the fleet, live to fight another day. But that strategy left millions of innocent people to die. All ships spread out, Doha ordered. Use the asteroid belt for cover. Make them work to find us. The human ships scattered in what looked like random directions. Some hid behind large rocks floating in space. Others dove deep into clouds of space dust that would confuse enemy sensors. Unlike the Confederation vessels, human ships were built to be sneaky when they needed to be. Commander, Lee Ji-hoon was piloting a small, fast ship called Ghostwalker. His vessel was tiny compared to the massive Confederation battleships, but it could move without being seen. He slipped around behind the Devourer formation while they were focused on the larger human ships in front of them. Ghostwalker in position, he reported quietly. I can see their command organisms from here. Doha had studied the enemy carefully. The Devourers weren't just individual ships fighting together. They were more like a single giant creature with many parts. Special bioships in the center of each group sent out signals that told all the others what to do. If you could cut off those signals, the swarm would lose its coordination. All units, this is Admiral Doha, she announced. Execute Broken Arrow. It was a battle plan that would have horrified Confederation commanders. Instead of one organized attack, the human ships struck from 6 different directions at exactly the same time. Some came from above, some from below, others from the sides. The Devourers had adapted to fight against neat, orderly formations, but they had never seen anything like this chaos. Captain Yuhana commanded the assault carrier, Inch and Lightning. Her ship was loaded with small fighter craft that could move, even faster than the destroyers. As soon as Doha gave the signal, she launched every single fighter she had. All pilots target the big ugly one in the center, she ordered. And remember, we're not trying to look pretty out there. We're trying to win. Her pilots flew in patterns that looked completely random to anyone watching. They wove between the enemy ships, sometimes coming so close they almost crashed into each other. But every movement was carefully planned. When one fighter was in trouble, another was always in position to help. When the Devourers tried to adapt to one attack pattern, the humans immediately switched to something completely different. The key was speed. The enemy could learn and adapt, but only if you gave them time. The humans hit hard and fast, targeting. The command organisms before the swarm could figure out what was happening. Commander Lee Jahoon's small ship struck the first blow. He fired everything he had at one of the central bioships that was sending out coordination signals. The creature tried to heal itself, but Jahoon kept firing until it finally went silent. All across the battlefield, other human ships were doing the same thing. They ignored the smaller Devourer vessels and focused entirely on the ones that were giving orders. Within minutes, the organized swarm began to fall apart. Without their command signals, individual Devourer ships started making their own decisions. Some tried to continue the attack. Others began retreating. A few even started fighting each other. The deadly coordination that had made them so dangerous was completely broken. "They're scattering," reported Captain Cho from his destroyer. "Never seen anything like it. They're actually running away." Doha watched her tactical display as the enemy formation collapsed. For the first time since the invasion began, the Devourers were retreating. The colonies were safe. 12 hours later, a communication came in from Confederation Admiral Veltara. The alien commander's face appeared on Doha's screen, her translucent features showing amazement and confusion. "Admiral Kim," she said, "how? Did you achieve victory with so few ships? Our computer model said it was impossible." Doha looked at the scattered remains of the enemy fleet on her display. "We fought like our lives depended on it," she said simply. "'Cause they did." She could see that Veltara didn't really understand. The Confederation had spent so long avoiding real conflict that they had forgotten the most basic truth about war. Sometimes you had to be willing to lose everything to save what mattered most. Colonel Park Hiron walked into the briefing room aboard the massive Confederation flagship and immediately felt the tension in the air. The ship was called Eternal Harmony, but the human crews had started calling it the Eternal Headache because of all the problems they'd been having with the alien officers. 6 months had passed since the Battle of Titan's Gate, and everything had changed. Human military advisors were now stationed on ships throughout the Confederation fleet, trying to teach alien crews how to fight a real war. It wasn't going smoothly. "Good morning, everyone," Hiron said to the mixed group of aliens. Sitting around the conference table, there were tall, crystal-skinned Velkhani officers, short but fierce Kristan warriors, the floating jellyfish-like aquatics who communicated through color changes in their translucent bodies. "Today we're going to talk about strategic withdrawal," she announced. Immediately, several of the aliens began shifting uncomfortably in their seats. Commander Zathera, whose crystal skin was glowing with agitation, raised one of his sharp-edged arms. "Colonel Park," he said in his musical voice, "this concept troubles us greatly. Our honor codes forbid abandoning our allies in battle. We do not retreat." Hiron had heard this argument dozens of times from dozens of different species. They all had their codes of honor, their ancient traditions, their proper ways of fighting, and those traditions were getting them killed. "Commander," she replied, trying to keep her voice patient, "let me ask you something. How much honor do you have when you're dead?" The Velkhani officer's crystal skin flashed with anger. "Death in battle is preferable to shame." "Okay. "And that," Hiron said bluntly, "is exactly why you were losing this war before we arrived. You'd rather die honorably than live to fight another day." She walked over to the tactical display and called up a map of the current war zone. Red areas showed where the Devourers still controlled space. Blue areas showed where the Confederation had reclaimed territory. It was a lot more blue than there had been 6 months ago. "Look at these results," she said. "Since human advisors started working with your fleets, we've stopped the Devourer advance completely. We've taken back 12 star systems. We've saved millions of lives. Do you know how we did that?" The aquatic representative, Captain Melissa, changed her body color to a questioning shade of purple. "Please explain, Colonel." "We taught your people to think like hunters instead of prey," Hiron said. "We showed them that sometimes the best way to protect your allies is to fall back, regroup, and attack from a better position." She pulled up footage from a recent battle where a mixed human-Christian fleet had faced a large devourer swarm. Of charging straight into the enemy formation like the Christian wanted to do, the fleet had retreated to an asteroid field and used the rocks as cover for an ambush. The Christian commanders hated this plan, Hiron explained. They said it was cowardly, but look at the results. They destroyed the entire enemy force and only lost 3 ships instead of 30. Commander Zethra was still glowing with frustration. Ow. But what about our traditions? Our warrior culture? Your warrior culture was designed for fighting other honorable warriors, Hiron replied. The Devourers don't care about honor. They don't follow rules. They just want to eat you and everything you've ever loved. She switched the display to show the Terra protocols that Admiral No Sung Min had developed. These were battle strategies that took advantage of each alien species' natural abilities while covering up their weaknesses. Look at what we've accomplished. By working together, she said. The aquatics used their empathic abilities to predict enemy movements. The Christian focused their warrior instincts on precise strikes instead of charging blindly into battle. The Velcani used their technical skills to coordinate complex battle plans. Captain Melissa S. color shifted to an interested shade of green. Our reconnaissance teams have been very effective using these new methods. Exactly, Hiron said. You're still using your natural talents, but now you're using them smartly. The Devourers used to be able to predict what you would do because you always followed the same patterns. Now, they can't adapt fast enough because we keep changing our tactics. She pulled up the strategic map again. The blue areas representing reclaimed territory were growing larger every day. Space that had been given up for lost was now back under Confederation control. The bottom line is this, Hiron said. We're not trying to coexist with the Devourers. We're not trying to negotiate with them or understand them. We're trying to completely destroy them before they destroy us. Commander Zethris Glow had shifted to a more thoughtful color. This is difficult for us to accept. For thousands of years we have sought peaceful solutions to conflict. And that's admirable, Hiron replied, but some enemies can't be reasoned with. The Devourers don't want peace. They don't want to share the galaxy. They want to consume every living thing and turn it into more of themselves. She looked around the room at all the alien faces. Your old way of fighting was beautiful and honorable and completely useless against this enemy. Our way is ugly and brutal, and it works. The meeting continued for another hour, with the aliens asking questions and Hiron explaining human military, concepts that had never occurred to peaceful species. By the end, even Commander Zethra seemed to understand why humans fought the way they did, as the aliens filed out of the briefing room. Captain Melissa approached Hiron. Her color had shifted to a warm orange that indicated gratitude. Colonel, she said, many of us are beginning to understand. You humans are not violent because you enjoy it. You are violent because sometimes violence is the only way to protect what you love. Hiron nodded. Now you're getting it. Admiral Kim Do-ha stood on the bridge of the massive warship, New Earth, looking out at the largest fleet ever assembled in galactic history. 3,000 ships from 47 different species stretched out before her like a metal constellation. In the distance, the Maelstrom Nebula swirled with dangerous colors, hiding the final Devourer stronghold somewhere in its depths. All task forces report ready for battle, announced Captain Song Minji from her position at the tactical center. The ship around them was a marvel of cooperation, combining human engineering with alien technology. Weapons that no single species could have built alone lined its hull. Do-ha took a deep breath. This was it. The final battle that would decide whether the galaxy lived or died. Deep inside the nebula, the Devourer Queen ships were breeding new. Swarms by the millions. If they weren't stopped here, nowhere would be safe. Remember the plan? She said into her communications system, speaking to thousands of commanders across dozens of species. This isn't about glory or honor. This is about survival. The battle plan was typically human in its complexity and brutality. Multiple attacks from different directions, fake assaults to confuse the enemy, and volunteers willing to die to complete the mission. Required perfect timing and absolute trust between species that had been strangers just months before. Commander Jang Wubin led the first wave in his fast attack ship. His job was to get the Devourer's attention while the main fleet moved into position. It was essentially a suicide mission disguised as a reconnaissance flight. "First wave moving in," he reported calmly. "Enemy is taking the bait." Doha watched on her tactical display as Wubin's small squadron of ships dove into the nebula. Almost immediately, thousands of Devourer vessels swarmed toward them like angry insects. Wubin's ships fought bravely, but they were vastly outnumbered. One by one, they disappeared from the display. "First wave is down," reported Captain Song. "But the enemy has moved away from their defensive positions." That was the signal for the real attack. Captain Lim Sahi, commanding a wing of Kristen battleships, came in from the side of the nebula. The Kristen warriors had learned to control their natural urge to charge straight into battle. Instead, they moved carefully, using the nebulas. Dangerous gravity fields to trap the Devourer fleet. "Kristen forces executing pincer movement," Sahi reported. "Enemy fleet is caught between us and the gravity wells." Devourers found themselves in an impossible position. If they tried to escape toward open space, the Kristen ships would cut them down. If they stayed near the gravity wells, they would be pulled apart by the nebula's natural forces. But the real target wasn't the regular Devourer ships. Deep in the center of their formation, protected by layers of smaller vessels, was the massive queen ship that controlled the entire swarm. As long as it survived, the Devourers could rebuild their forces endlessly. Lieutenant Colonel Kim Tai-ho had volunteered for the most dangerous job of all. His ship, the Busan Thunder, had been stripped of everything except engines and a massive antimatter bomb. His crew was made up of volunteers from 7 different species, all of them knowing they wouldn't survive the mission. "Thunder requesting permission for final approach," Tai-ho said over the radio. Doha felt her throat tighten. She had sent many people to their deaths during this war, but it never got easier. "Permission granted, Colonel. Thank you. Just doing our job, Admiral." For the Confederation, Doha watched as the small ship accelerated toward the center of the enemy formation. Devourer vessels swarmed around it, trying to stop it, but Tai-ho's ship was too fast and too determined. It disappeared into the massive queen ship like a bullet. Entering a target, for a moment, nothing happened.
Ow.
Then the queen ship exploded with the force of a small star. The light was so bright that every ship in the fleet had to shield their sensors. The explosion sent shock waves through the nebula that could be felt even at their distance. But more importantly, the queen ship's death cry echoed through the psychic network that connected every Devourer in the galaxy. Without their central command, the swarm immediately began to fall apart. Individual ships stopped coordinating with each other. Some fled in panic. Others simply shut down and drifted in space. "All enemy forces are retreating or surrendering," reported Captain Song. "The swarm is broken. The cleanup took 3 days." Scattered Devourer ships were hunted down and destroyed throughout the nebula. When it was over, the threat that had terrified the galaxy for months was finally ended. The ceremony took place in the rebuilt High Council chambers on the capital world. Representatives from 800 different planets gathered to witness something that had never happened before. Admiral Kim Doha stood before them all, still wearing her battle-stained uniform. "By unanimous vote," announced the council speaker, "we establish the Galactic Defense Council. Admiral Kim Doha of Earth will serve as Supreme Commander of all military forces." Doha accepted the position with typical human directness. "We didn't fight this war to rule you," she said. "We fought it because it was the right thing to do. But if you want us to protect the galaxy, we'll do it our way." The changes came quickly after that. Humans took command positions throughout the fleet. Species that had never known war began training armies. The old Confederation's gentle harmony was replaced by organized strength. Later, standing on the observation deck of the new command station orbiting Earth, Doha looked out at the stars with satisfaction. Humanity had started as the lowest ranked members of galactic society. Now they were its protectors. Admiral Harade Commander Park Ji-sung reported, "Our deep space sensors are detecting strange signals from the Andromeda galaxy." Doha smiled. "Let them come. The galaxy knows how to fight now."